Welcome to the Random Encounter Show. I'm DeathStalker V. In this episode, we're down on the game table because we're going to be discussing and taking a look at the Mattel Intellivision. This episode is going to be dedicated specifically to collecting this wonderful console. Listen, if you're into video gaming, especially the retro scene or the classic scene, and you don't own an Intellivision, you're really missing out. Especially nowadays with the homebrew scene that's growing up around this wonderful console. So I'm not going to go out there and throw a whole bunch of history out about the Intellivision and its lifespan from 1979 to 1990. Instead, I want to focus more on specifically how to get into it, how to collect for it, because there's not a whole lot of information out there that's beginner friendly, I would say, that if you want to jump in collecting this console, that it makes a lot of sense. So without further ado, we're going to go grab the camera. You'll come around here on this side of the table with me, and we'll just dive straight into what you need to know about the Intellivision. Okay, to kick this thing off and really talk about the console itself. This I have in front of me is an Intellivision 2. Okay, this is the console that I suggest collecting for. We'll get to exactly why in just a few moments. There are many models of the Intellivision console itself. There's the Mattel Intellivision, which is, I'll throw a picture here on the screen, but it's got the wood grain and it's a beautiful console. It's a large console. Okay, they revised that and they came out with the Intellivision 2. This isn't any different than the Intellivision 1, other than it's more of a budget model. Still plays the same library of games. It's just a different model. Now, other companies produce different models too, such as the Sears Super Video Arcade. INTV, who would buy the rights when Mattel wanted to sell off the Mattel Electronics and Television department. INTV was a lot of the employees that were involved with Intellivision. They actually bought the rights to it, and they continued selling Intellivision consoles and games under the INTV Corporation. They created the INTV System 3, which looked just like the first Mattel Intellivision. No wood grain, all black, more chrome. And then they sold also a Super Pro system, the INTV Super Pro system. And again, looked just like the first, actually looked just like the INTV System 3, but it just had the word Super Pro on it. Maybe there was an additional LED light or something, I can't remember. Now all those consoles, are known to be pretty reliable. But the reason I suggest the Intellivision 2 for a first-time collector, okay, because if you're like me, one thing I'll tell you before we even get into this, if you have the luxury, of checking Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or yard sales or flea markets, and you have Intellivision stuff in your area, if it's clean, working, and in nice condition, especially if it comes with games and such, that's probably your best bet. But in my area, absolutely no Intellivision. I don't know. It's never been. It doesn't seem to have been marketed here or something. But I've never seen Intellivision in the wild. I don't see it pop up on the marketplaces and such. So if you're like me, you're forced to go to eBay or buying online, I'm going to suggest the Intellivision 2. A lot of people, they do not like this specific console. I'll get into it in a little while. But the positives for me is, first off, because this was a budget console, it was mostly done in plastic. Okay, but it's a very hard plastic. It reminds me a lot of the NES, actually, the toaster version of the NES. but it has proven to be very reliable and very sturdy. One of the revisions to the console, okay, was that it's the only console that does not have the power supply inside of the unit. That's a big plus for me. That was a revision that made this a little cheaper. If you know anything about electronics, power supplies will tend to fail over time. I'm showing you the bottom of the console now so you can get an idea of what the console looks like from all the way around. But if you know anything about electronics, power supplies tend to fail over time. Every single model of the Intellivision has an internal power supply except the Intellivision 2. It was actually made as one of these handy adapters. Okay, now this is a factory original of the adapter. This plugs right into the back of your Intellivision. It is a three-way, plug. It does plug in exactly right here into the back of the Intellivision. If this adapter is basically your power supply at this point. If this fails, okay, it is very easily and cheaply replaced. There's modern equivalents that you can buy if you look up an Intellivision 2 power adapter, for under $10. So if you buy another unit and the power supply fails, you're going to have to open up your console. You're going to need some advanced electronic repair skills to get in that console, get the old power supply out, and find a replacement, which may be pretty difficult, and replace it. So that's one thing. The second thing, all of the consoles except the Intellivision 2, which we have, and the Sears Super Video Arcade have hardwired controllers. Okay? If you're using a video game system and you drop the controller or wear over time and your controller is broken or stops functioning, having it hardwired to the system's again going to require you to open up the system itself with some more advanced electronic skills to remove the old controller and solder in a new controller if you can find parts. Because they're hardwired, they didn't make extra controllers so much for the other models of the Intellivision. With the Intellivision 2, I'll show you here, it has a port where the controllers plug in. I also love the fact that the controllers rest on top of the console, so it stores away very nicely. Also, the nice thing about the Intellivision 2 is the controller wires are much longer than the other Intellivisions. That way you don't have to sit right on top of the console to play the games. Okay, talking about the controller, I have some joystick adapters here. Let's look at, this is how your controllers would come from the factory, or how if you buy an Intellivision, you can expect your Intellivision 2 controllers to appear. Okay, a lot of people complain about the Intellivision controllers, specifically the Intellivision 2 controllers. I don't know why. They claim that holding it hurts their hands, they get cramps, or pushing the buttons hurt their fingers. You hear this a lot on YouTube. A lot of YouTubers love to run down the Intellivision in general. I don't get it. But let me tell you, I've spent hours holding this controller. I find it very easy to use, and I've never had my finger hurt from pressing the side buttons. It doesn't take a lot of pressure to push the side buttons. I don't know, I don't get it. But I think if we took all of the YouTubers, which are a lot, quite a few, I think if we put them all into a group of people who said this hurts their hands, I could almost guarantee you, I think it'd be a safe gamble to bet that none of them have ever used an arc welder. Okay, I don't know, but I really don't get that. The controllers are fairly easy for me to use. It's pretty neat. It's a 15 button disc controller. When I say disc, this is a disc. It's 16 directional. I hold the controller and I can use my thumb and my fingers over here for the 4 side buttons or action buttons. I can easily use the disc with my thumb or using my fingers. A lot of people use it different styles. I've seen some people use their fingers to make the disc like a rocker almost like a paddle. The disc is actually really responsive. I like it. I also like the fact that it has 360 degrees free rotation and is self-centering. That means I can move my finger around without actually having to pick it up and go like this and mash the disc. No, it's very easy just to move around. This was a predecessor of the D-pad, of course. But yeah, I have no problem using these controllers. So I don't get all the issues with it. I really don't. But yeah. Now, on this you see that I have some joystick controllers. I've always preferred arcade sticks for my gaming. Okay, with the arcade sticks here, I love it, especially for the more fast-paced games. My wife also found it much easier to play the Intellivision without the disc. If you need to know a reason that you want to get into the Intellivision, before we even get to the real reasons, my wife absolutely hates video games. She detests them. I bought the Intellivision in hopes to interest her in video gaming because I enjoy it so much. I set her down. We got to play in the Intellivision. She actually enjoyed it. And in fact, you may be able to catch her playing it by herself. That alone, if you knew my wife, would convince you to go ahead and purchase an Intellivision. I'm going to joke. But yeah, you know, so there's some things to expect about the console. There's the cartridge slot is located over here. Okay. Also, if you're going to be hooking this up to a modern TV, you've got a coaxial out here. Here is my suggestion. This is just a piece of an AV cord. You know, normally they come red, yellow, and white. Okay, this one was a very short one, so I decided to sacrifice it in which to hook up my consoles. It plugs directly into the port there on the back of the Intellivision 2. And for modern TVs, are just doing away with that RF modular box switch. Get you an F-type connector. They're available on Amazon. They're normally, you can get a 2-pack for like $6. This plugs directly into the back of this, and this goes into your antenna port of your coaxial port, but it'll normally be labeled antenna on your TV. Now, that's pretty simple. In another video, I will be showing how to get the optimal signal without modding your consoles for gameplay. That'll be another episode, but I do not believe in console modding so much. We'll get into that later. Now, we talked about the controllers. A lot of people complain about that. Another thing is this. And Intellivision 2 only has one button, while the other consoles have two, an on and off and a reset button. This shares reset and on and off on the same button, and you have a red LED light that shows you when the unit's powered on. Funny story is I bought this from the guy who runs Intellivision Revolution. I'll put a link down below. He runs a wonderful store, and he has a lot of wonderful Intellivision information on his website. His name is Luke Boudreau. Just fantastic guy. Anyways, when I first bought this, you know, I got this Intellivision about a year ago. I didn't own an Intellivision for a very, very, very long time. Hey, I've told it before, but this was the first console I ever truly wanted to own. But it was too late in the game for them to find one for me, so I never got it. And it didn't take long for the 16 era to kick in, and the Intellivision was just forgotten, to be honest. But last year I said I really want to explore classic gaming, and the Intellivision's one I definitely want. But I got the console, I turned it on, played some games and stuff, but I went to turn it off for the first time. And I hit the button, okay, it reset, so I said, okay, we'll hold it. It just reset. And I kept going and going and going, and I couldn't figure out how to get this console off. And I messaged Luke on Facebook, on private messenger. And I said, hey man, what's the trick of getting this thing to turn off? It was driving me batty. And he says, you've got to hold that button down for like at least 6 seconds. Okay, so that might be helpful for someone if you're going to grab the Intellivision 2. You got to hold it down, and there's no indicator. You hold it down, the LED is going to stay on. There's no indicator of when it's actually going to power off. You just got to hold it down until you think you're lucky enough, then let go and hope that it turns off. So that is one thing I could say, that the other consoles, they have dedicated on and off and reset buttons and switches. We talked about the arcade sticks, the Intellivision 2, before I get too far ahead of myself. It is the console where they made these adapters. Mattel made them, so did Point Master. They're very easy to attach, and they're self-centering joysticks because the disc is self-centering, and they're very, very easy to use, like I said. Especially if you love things like me, shooters, arcade titles, etc. They're very fun to have, and they're very easy to hold and manipulate to play your game. Okay. Now, the Intellivision 2 does have some games locked out of it. I think there's 4 or 5 games that Mattel, when they came with this revision, they updated the executive or BIOS of the system for reading cartridges. And they essentially locked out a few of the Coleco made third-party cartridges. Does that really affect collecting for the Intellivision? For me, no. Because the games they locked out were garbage. I know there's a console war between Intellivision and ColecoVision. Okay? And I know that Coleco was coming out with the ColecoVision, its own console, that was really closely related to the Intellivision in a lot of ways, especially the controllers and such. But their pack-in game was Donkey Kong. Okay, if you don't know what Donkey Kong is, I don't know what to tell you, because I don't know what rock you've been living under since 1982. Okay? Or maybe I'll give you the excuse if you were born after the year 2000. Okay, I'll give that to you. But I doubt you're watching this show. But they made a Donkey Kong port for the Intellivision. And the rumor is, and I fully believe it, is that they made that port atrocious so that they could show the port side by side in an effort to advertise the ColecoVision. I truly believe it. Look, there was also one game that was locked out Mattel had made. Electric Company Fun with Math or something. Not really any games you're going to be missing on the Intellivision. Okay? So I would not worry about that so much. But yeah, I definitely recommend the Intellivision 2 for getting into it. Like I said, I got into the Intellivision 2 a year ago. I did some research, but there was no videos like that we're doing now to really help or tell exactly why or what you wanted. Okay, so that's why I'm making this video. But yeah, it's definitely been a great entry console for me into what really makes the Intellivision great, and that's the gaming and the game library that it possesses. Let's take a look for a second. Now, here's the really neat thing about Intellivision, is that it is one of the most affordable consoles to collect for. I'm not joking, okay? You should never pay anywhere near over $100 for this console unless it comes with a bundle of games. I would say it's 2022 now. For a good, clean, working console, you know, with 2 controllers guaranteed to work, power cord and video cord, I would say you shouldn't pay over $40 for this. Okay, now I know some on eBay are listed for more and all that. You see that with everything. There's a lot of people that are just very hopeful. Okay, but just out in the wild or at auction and things, I see these frequently go for under $50. Hey, it is what it is. The games themselves are oftentimes really affordable as well. I talked about that in the last video where we talked about collecting for classic gaming consoles. For the vast majority of Intellivision games, you're getting complete in-box copies for $10 or less. And that's the neat thing about Intellivision, is that a lot of games you get will still be complete in box. Just for example here, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. How they package the game is in a gatefold box. The game would be in a plastic tray. This is how most Intellivision cartridges look, especially made by Mattel. But they would also include, normally, a manual and overlays. When it comes to the controller, these overlays are pretty neat, because if the game utilizes the keypad, and some games that don't, all you have to do is slide in an overlay into your controller here, and then you're ready to go. It shows you what each button does here. So they're very handy to have. I don't oftentimes use the overlays. In fact, I can just lay one near me and sort of just reference it without having to get it in the controller and out and all that kind of stuff. Probably explains why I'm terrible at a lot of games. But yeah, they oftentimes, all the games are going to include oftentimes color manuals as well. The Intellivision was really trend-setting, guys, especially as we're going to get into this library. It was really trend-setting, but we would see, game boxes coming back with like the Sega Genesis and stuff, where you oftentimes kept the box because it was made to actually hold the game after purchase. And let's talk a little bit about the Intellivision and some of the wonderful things about it that really set it apart. A lot of people don't know it, but the Intellivision is technically a 16-bit console. Okay, not graphically. It's running on the 16-bit CPU, one of the most early 16-bit CPUs. But what really makes the Intellivision stand out is features such as the first console that allowed you to pause from the controller for most all games by pressing 1 or 9 or 3 and 7 on the keypad simultaneously. That's a big deal. You play an Atari 2600, you're not pausing your games. This was the first real competitor to the Atari 2600. It had to face a monster, and I think it did a fantastic job. And there's just so many features about this that really set trends going forward into gaming. One of those things would be its game library itself. Now, where Atari and Coleco had purchased and got the rights to big arcade gaming companies. Atari had people like Namco and Williams and their own arcade branch. Coleco had Nintendo and Universal and other games. Mattel didn't have those arcade game licenses. They later would get Data East, of course, which is a big license to have. But a lot of the games they created were created specifically for home play. And it would be the first time we really seen that in a console. And as you know, later on console gaming, early console gaming was trying to make arcade games come home. Especially the Atari 2600 and the 7800, not the 7800, 5200, and the 7800 if we're honest, but also the ColecoVision and even the early NES. All these consoles had more arcade ports than anything else. Intellivision, of course, went a different route, and that route would really be picked up later on in the NES and 8-bit lines and early 16-bit generation, where console gaming became its own separate entity and own buzz around it compared to arcade gaming. So I think Mattel was really a trendsetter in that. And let me set some things to the side here. You guys awake still? Hey, we're having fun. We're getting into that. But the library for the Intellivision. Now, the library for the Intellivision's large. Over 120 games for sure. It spanned from 1979 at the early release of the Intellivision to the mainstream release in 1980, all the way up till 1990. Games would come out over time. The library is very versatile, and it's got a lot of variation to it. There's a lot of different genres, and a lot of genres would be done for the first time on the Intellivision. Another neat innovation that would be a first for the Intellivision was the Intellivoice. It's this voice synthesis module. There was 4 games released for this. What it does is it plugs into the side of your Intellivision in the cartridge port, like so. And then you would plug a game into here. This volume control here controls the voice. This added a voice sound channel to your games. Now, this might sound a little bit gimmicky, but it actually wasn't. Okay, there were 4 games released on the Intellivoice. 3 of them I would consider must-haves. Those 3 would be the 3 I have: Bomb Squad, Space Spartans, and B-17 Bomber. Okay, the other one was a Tron game, Solar Sailor, and haven't tried it out. I probably will when I find it in a bundle or something I buy. But until then, it's not one that I'm just having to go for. But these 3 games right here are excellent. We'll take a look at Bomb Squad here in a little bit. But, you know, these games, they look just like, you know, your standard Intellivision games. They would have the gold shiny label there. The layout, the inlays, and of course the manual. So they you know, they came in the gatefold box. So just fantastic stuff. The Intellivoice games, they really use the Intellivoice to make the game happen. It's not just one of those gimmicky games where, you know, you hear voices in the game that really don't have any pertinent use for the game. For all 3 of the games I just showed, it would be impossible to actually really play the games without hearing the voices. And like I said, they're 3 fantastic games. We'll look at them later on in future episodes on the Intellivision. We're not reviewing any games here, per se. We'll take a look at some game footage. And but yeah, also, don't pay a lot for this. I paid $20 for a loose Intellivoice and the 3 complete in-box games on eBay. You know, at an auction. I was the only bidder for $20. Maybe I overpaid for it. I don't know. But yeah, it's cheap and the games are great. And let's start looking at the games here. We can start off with Demon Attack. I wanted to show this packaging really quickly. iMagic is probably my it is my favorite third-party publisher for the classic gaming scene. They publish stuff on the Atari consoles, on the Coleco, on the different 8-bit computers of the time. But they really went crazy and they really did their most work on the Intellivision. And for all consoles and stuff, especially the 2600 and whatnot, they sold their games in these awesome silver shiny boxes. Look at that. It's just beautiful boxes. And instead of a gatefold box, you would open these. You would get your manuals and your magazines for more games and stuff. These would come with this really sturdy plastic tray that would hold your game along with your inlays for the game. And this is Demon Attack. Now guys, you know I love shooters, so we're going to look at a few shooters first. All the stuff I picked we're going to look at is just random picks from me. There's not reviews, like I said, just random picks. But Demon Attack may be the greatest classic shooter that ever was. I don't know. We're going to do a series at some point, and we're going to pit the classic consoles we have out into a shootout for shooters. Who had the best and what was the best. But Demon Attack, I can't say as of right now, but so far I think it may take the greatest, and it's the Intellivision version, by the way. This appeared in a few different places, but all of them great. But the Intellivision version, I think, may be the greatest classic shooter of all time. At least console gaming wise, I should say. But we're going to do that. We're going to have a shootout. But Demon Attack is awesome. You know, you had these. You're on a lunar base, or you're on the moon or something. I'm sure it's different if I read the module, but I always consider I was on the moon. You can see the Earth in the background, and you go through these waves of alien attackers. They come in waves. You get through the waves, and you go into space and have a boss fight with the mothership. It's an amazing boss fight. The mothership is sending out baby demons or seagulls or whatever the heck they're supposed to be. While you're trying to avoid them and shoot them down, while you're also taking down the shield of this mothership. Once the shield's gone, there's this moving gap within the shield. Moving gap going across the bottom of the mothership. And you've got to time your shot to get it into that gap and hit the center, or I guess the brains of the mothership, and it has this epic explosion. And you go back down to the moon, and you start all over again. Except this time the waves of aliens, the aliens are much faster, and they gain new projectiles throughout the game as you advance. You know, lasers, nuclear bombs, homing missiles. I don't know. It's a very difficult game. I love how difficult the game is, but it's still playable. It's really a challenging game. I love that fact. It's like I said, it's a favorite of mine. It would go on my list of top shooters that I enjoy of all time. I don't know about you, but I love it. Next up, we'll talk about another iMagic game, and that's Microsurgeon. This is a very unique shooter and a very unique game that there are some games that are sort of in this genre, like Fantastic Voyage on Atari 2600, but none of them are really like Microsurgeon. Some kind of bad medical incident happened outside somewhere. I don't know, it's in the manual. Anyway, they're bringing patients into this hospital, and you're a microsurgeon. You run a microbe, a robotic microbe, remotely, and you go inside the human body, and you're going to take a look at what's wrong with it. Now, the upper half of the human body is well represented and actually has some very nice graphics for the time. This was a 1982 game. You try to move through capillaries, veins, arteries, the lymph system, different things like that, and not get into the tissue and bones so much because antibodies will attack, and your little microbe only has so much power, so it uses a lot less power to move through the open channels versus boring through tissue and such. You get ultrasonic waves that blow up tumors and different things like that. You get a medicine that takes out bacteria and parasites and such. And then for some reason you get aspirins to shoot. I think those take out viruses if I remember correctly. But the game is just fantastic. We'll definitely come back and take a long look at the Microsurgeon. One neat thing is I play this a lot with my wife because it's 2-player co-op. That was something the Intellivision did that really wasn't around at the time as well. There's a lot of 2-player co-op games available for the Intellivision. But with 2-player co-op from Microsurgeon, one player controls moving the ship itself and the displays and stuff of checking the statuses of the patients. The other player, the second player, their stick actually shoots whatever they're trying to shoot, and they can make the selection on what to shoot. So you're moving your ship and shooting simultaneously with each other. So you can really, really, really go through the game and get to higher and more difficult levels doing that. In that mode, okay, it also, for one player, turns Microsurgeon into one of the earliest twin-stick shooters for consoles. Not on purpose, but it's awesome to play it that way. It does, I guess it is on purpose because it tells you in the manual that if one player is doing it, they should really try it with both controllers, okay? So yeah, I guess it was on purpose. But yeah, it's a just unique shooter. I know of nothing else like it on any console since this game was made. I love this kind of theme. I love that it's the human body and stuff. If you guys know any other games that are similar to Microsurgeon, make sure to put them in the comments below. If I have the ability, I would love to check them out. Let's go over here. We'll talk about some Activision shooters real quick. 2 Activision shooters come to my mind. Would also make it high on the list of greatest shooters of the classic era on consoles. The first one, Worm Womper. I absolutely love this game. I love any games that involve insects for whatever reason. I love bugs. Worm Whopper's great. You play a farmer, you get a DDT sprayer. Oh yeah, DDT was still a thing. Come on. Our crops have never been the same since they took DDT away, and neither have our streams and fisheries. Yeah, DDT anyway, you're a farmer and these waves of gigantic bugs are coming to invade your cornfield. And the game starts off, you've got 2 rows of corn behind you, and you've got free movement over this entire screen, and these waves come, and lots of worms and snails and caterpillars and different things. The waves, as you complete, after you shoot down everything, as you complete it, the waves get bigger, faster, and more crazier. This game can reach an insane level the higher you go with it. I did a high score challenge with it once, and by the time I was done, it was just, my brain was almost turned off, just because the waves had become so massive. Now what these waves are trying to do is they're not trying to kill you, the farmer, they're trying to reach your corn. So you've got to take these insects out before they reach your corn. You do that with a DDT gun. If you get touched by an insect, you do not lose a life. Your DDT sprayer breaks and you got to run down to the barn and grab you another one, because every barn should have an almost unlimited supply of DDT and DDT hand sprayers. Come on now, this is the farm. We got to defend it. And the game is really just fantastic for a fixed screen horizontal shooter. I love the fact that at first it's giant insects and giant corn snakes and stuff. But as the game goes along, several of the insects just get more gigantic, like the snails and the slugs and things. Moths come and they lay eggs all over the field that hatch into the worms. In fact, the further you go, you will find Mothra itself. These really gigantic moths. Come on. At this point in the game, there should be a secret code that unlocks Godzilla to come aid the farmer. You know, Godzilla, needs his DDT as well. It probably helped him mutate into what he became. Anyways, fun game. Next up, Dreadnought Factor. Oh my goodness, what a scrolling horizontal shooter. What a fantastic game. This game, it came out on several different consoles. The Atari 52, the only two several, the Atari 5200 and the Intellivision. I'm pretty sure it came out on the Intellivision first. It also came out on the Atari 8-bit computer system, and I'm sure others such as the Commodore 64. Activision was a big name back then. Still is today. It was the first third-party publisher to ever exist, with iMagic being the second, following quickly in their footsteps. But with Dreadnought Factor, these huge dreadnought ships that are heavily armed, and full of fighter fleets and different things, they're coming toward the Earth for whatever reason. And the best way to take these out are not meet them with equal or superior force. Heck no. They want you to take a small fighter out and do bombing runs across this massive ship. Oh my goodness, guys, what a game. What a game. There's a lot of different dreadnoughts as you take them down. The difficulty on this setting, I think there's 7 difficulty settings, okay? If you choose the first one, the big ships will do nothing. It's going to be boring to death. If you choose anything over 4, get ready to be blown to pieces, okay? So I normally play on 4. I think on this video I did 3 just so I didn't get blown up so much so you could actually see what was going on. But the top button fires your lasers, and you use that against the cannons, and you use it against the fighter launching bays. These ships will launch fighters that look just like the Star Trek Enterprise, which brought up a curious thing in mind, that maybe the Earth is rebelling at this point against the United Federation of, against the Federation. So Benjamin Sisko and Luke Picard are coming to reclaim the Earth, and we're not gonna let them. I don't know. Fantastic game. This concept's fantastic. But the Intellivision version really is exclusive to the Intellivision, because all other versions of this game I've played, it has been turned into a vertical scrolling shooter. I like horizontal and vertical. I don't have a preference, but it's just a really, really, really fun game, and we haven't seen much like it since. Alright, we're done with the shooters. We're going to move to the next favorite category of mine, which would be adventure slash RPG slash dungeon crawl fantasy games. Come on, how could DeathStalker 5 not love them? And in fact, first up will be Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. We took a look at this box and cartridge earlier. This is the first Dungeons and Dragons game to ever exist. Mattel got the license from TSR. Now, what this is a adventure game. It really has no role-playing game elements to it. You got a party of 3 archers. There's an overworld map. You're going to start off and you're going to be exploring mountains. The mountains will change colors as you get over them, and that lets you know what type of tool is inside that mountain or what you could find inside that mountain. You go into the mountain and they have these crazy dungeons inside them, and you never know how the dungeon's going to be laid out, and you never know what's going to be in the dungeon. And the interesting thing about this is once you're in the dungeon, as you move around, this game plays like another twin stick shooter because you use the keypad. On the camera here, you can see you use the keypad, and this is the directions you would fire. Okay, and you use your disc to move, and you can hold down a side button to run as well, so that you can move in one direction and shoot in other directions simultaneously. It's a very fun game. It's a very addictive game. I know it looks simple. It looks very simplistic with the graphics here. But once you get playing this, it's really hard to put it down. I'm being honest with you here. It's a fantastic game. Now, what you're trying to do is collect a boat, an axe, a key, and different tools you'll need to move over the overworld map. You know, you need a boat to cross water. You need an axe to go through the forest, and you'll need a key to get through the gates to make it to the Cloudy Mountain on the map. At the Cloudy Mountain, there is a crown of kings that is guarded by winged dragons. Okay, definitely a fun game. I believe it's only... I think it is for 2 players, but just as a single player playing this, it's fantastic. Up next for this series would be the second game, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, Treasure of Tarman. What fantastic box art on these games. This game is really different than its predecessor. It's a 1982 game that is a first-person role-playing game set into a massive dungeon under a castle. When I first heard about this game and saw screenshots of it, I thought it looked interesting. Playing it, I'm blown away by this game. I still haven't made it to the end of this game. It's a long game, and it's going to require you to really read the manual and understand it and use the overlays. It's very involved, to the point where both hands are represented in the game, and what item you have in which hand and what you attack with and stuff really determines a lot of how the game progresses and what you can do in the game. You do have experience points and level up. You do have hit points and such. As you play, you can stop and rest. But just a massive underground dungeon to explore with traps and locked doors and all this. Also, you have a pack. You can rotate items in and out and choose when to use them or not. Like I said, for a 1982 game, this was really ambitious, and they pulled it off. And when I was looking at this game, screenshots of the game, I found it interesting that one of the writers or the reviewers talking about this game said that this game was a first-person dungeon crawler that was unmatched until the 16-bit era. And I thought back to all the wonderful sort of first-person RPGs that were on the NES. And that struck me as odd for an Intellivision game. But after playing this game and spending time with it and getting used to it and understanding how it's played, I can agree with that synopsis, as crazy as it sounds. I can actually agree with that. Now, up next this game was called Tower of Doom. It did not have the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons license for it. Why is that? Because it was in development when Mattel decided to sell off the Intellivision and the rights to the Intellivision. INTV Corporation was formed, they bought it, and they actually got the game that was in development, and it was going to be Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Tower of Doom. They didn't have the rights with TSR to call it Dungeons and Dragons anymore, and I don't know if they had the money or just weren't interested, but they just decided to call it Tower of Doom, finish the game off, and release it. This game shares a lot with the first two games, but it's really, really different than either one. You're running around on the map like the first game. You have this massive tower and all of its dungeons. But the interesting thing is you can throw a melee weapon. You can shoot a bow or throw an axe or a spear or whatever and kill things on the map. But if you have a melee weapon, you enter into this side view combat with whatever it is you've came into contact with. And I've tried my best, but Street Fighter 2 moves do not work. No Hadoukens coming off here, despite the rumors. Okay. But the game's fantastic. In fact, you can actually negotiate with the monsters or try to give them some kind of items or whatever so that they don't attack you. You know, there's a merchant class. There's a lot of different classes available to take down in the dungeons. There's a lot of different ways to play this game. There's a Holy Grail quest. There's an Evil Wizard quest. But, you know, you can set this game up so that you can go into this dungeon and you will be down there for hours. There's a lot of items to find. There is experience points. There is leveling up. You do gain strength and your statistics in this game. It is a crazy game, is what I'm going to say about it, and it's crazy fun. And I think to me, out of the classic era, it is the one I enjoyed the most, even off PC so far. You know, like the Atari 8-bit on. It is my favorite, you know, dungeon crawler of the era out of all. Okay, and that's a big thing for me. I love my dungeon crawlers. Okay, but these three games are definitely recommended from me. They just really shine on the Intellivision. Now we'll take a look at a few random games here before we go. Let's take a look at an Intellivoice game, Bomb Squad here. I just chose this game real quick that you can hear the sounds and effects for Bomb Squad. It is really a puzzle game. And I'm not typically a big puzzle game player, but this one's fantastic. But let me tell you right off the grip that if you have a nuclear device in your city and DeathStalker V is the only person on call to come deactivate it, pack your bags and leave town. Just leave. Don't even pack your bags. Just grab whoever you can that's living still and get out of town as quickly as possible. I've never once successfully beat this game. Now I haven't played it a whole lot, but it is puzzles inside puzzles inside puzzles. The main theme of the game is you've got a hidden number or numbers to deactivate this nuclear device. There's a code. You uncover this code by successfully deactivating circuit boards. So and in the circuit boards you got to follow the order of things. You got to cut pieces off, remove pieces, disconnect pieces, whatever. And then on top of that, the pieces, you have this memory puzzle where it may not go by what piece it was but by different colors or different things. I don't know. I play the game until I get a headache. I really enjoy it. But it's just, like I said, it's puzzles inside puzzles. I would like to beat this game sometime. Maybe we'll do a live Bomb Squad marathon here. You got 30 minutes to deactivate the bomb. Okay? I'm sure any 6-year-old could do it. But it's really a fun game. The music, the voices, everything are well done. And the music drives me crazy. It really builds some tension. I don't know. It's a fantastic game. Let's talk about Frog Bog here. The first console I ever played was an Atari 2600. And the first game I ever played was with my Aunt Lisa, and it was called Frogs and Flies. when I first saw the Intellivision as a kid, my friend Robbie had it. And he had Frog Bog for it. Now, Frogs and Flies made me fall in love with the Atari and the idea of playing games at home. Frog Bog, Frogs and Flies was a port of Frog Bog to the Atari 2600. Frog Bog itself on the Intellivision has way better graphics and sound and gameplay. And is it a fantastic game? I think a lot of people overlook Frog Bog for how simplistic it is. And I don't know how fun it would be for a single player. But I play this with my wife and we have a blast. There's all kind of different ways of setting up your frog, from just moving the joystick and a computer takes over, to putting full control of the tongue and the jump and everything and the movement over to the players. But it's a fantastic game. It has a day and night mode, and it's just fun jumping and trying to outscore each other as a two-player game. So as a single player, you might overlook Frog Bog, but for two players, I definitely recommend Frog Bog. You know, it's another one of those amazing co-op games from Mattel. One more we'll take a look at here is DeathStalker. This was another one Robbie had back in the day. DeathStalker is, I believe it is the first survival horror style game, or at least the first, I don't know what you would call it. It's, you have shipwrecked and you're inside a cave, and there's giant spiders and bats and things, and also homicidal robots. You have a safety pod in the center of this Pac-Man-like maze, okay? And you move around within this maze and you will find a gun that has 6 bullets. I guess it's a revolver. So it has sort of a science fiction theme to that. But the gameplay, you move around this maze and you mainly want to target the robots. That's where your big points are and everything. And the game starts out really slow. It does pick up speed over time, and there will be a lot of robots and a lot of different kind of robots trying to kill you. This, just like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, has the directional disc to move your character, and you use the keypad to fire in what direction. So you can move in one direction and fire in another simultaneously. I love these games, but DeathStalker is definitely a fun one. And that'll be it for the original library here. I have a lot more games. We'll be going through them. We'll be doing a lot of reviews. These are not the best of games per se. These are just a few I picked at random to get some screen footage for. Another place that the Intellivision is just going crazy. And to me, after checking several, the classic consoles out, I think the Intellivision really has it going on. And it's the modern published games and the homebrew scene. Here, if you're looking at, we'll move to the camera here. This is, these are just 3 Electronite games out on. I absolutely love this third-party publisher. They're not really a homebrew company, They pay developers to create original games. They fully produce them and release them for the Intellivision. And this is a classic. A lot of you may know Defender of the Crown. We'll have an episode on all 3 of these. I wanted to take a look here at A Tale of Dragons and Swords. A fantastic dungeon crawler. The graphics, the sounds, the music tracks, everything on this game's fantastic. It's a modern dungeon crawler that's got some Zelda sort of elements to it and some classic dungeon crawling elements, including a massive fire-breathing dragon fight. But I absolutely love this game. I'm going to replay it to see the different endings. It took me several nights to get to the final boss here and get past this dragon, and a lot of grinding. Okay, but this is a game that if this game was published, say on the PlayStation Network, I would download this game and give it a try for sure. Okay, but the fact that it's unique to the Intellivision, and all these Electronite games are unique to the Intellivision, and there's several other companies producing just fantastic games as well. It makes Intellivision, even if you weren't interested in the classic library, that if you were interested in the modern games coming out for it, it would be worth having an Intellivision just for the new games coming out. And we're going to be seeing a lot of those in the future. But this one, guys, you know I love shooters. Anthropomorphic Force. This is a fantastic shooter. It has a lot of R-type vibes to it. It's a vertical shooter that plays like a horizontal shooter. You know, you're moving down into your planet after this asteroid struck it, and there's all this mutant life coming out of this hole. But yeah, it reminds me a lot of R-Type. I absolutely love it. There's 7 tunnels, they call them, or stages, and they have 3 distinct sections each ending with this massive boss fight. This game is fantastic. Okay, this is one of the best shooters I've ever played. And I don't go too crazy saying that. Hey, I've got a good pedigree of shooters under my belt. But this is really, really, really a good shooter. It uses the Intellivoice. Okay, but you can play it without the Intellivoice. The Intellivoice adds the power-up voices and the speed-up voices and such. But yeah, all the way around, this is a fantastic shooter. And it's just amazing what the developers and these companies and these homebrew creators are getting out of this 1979 hardware. It really is. But yeah, let's have a few more collecting points here before we go. The first thing I would say, if you're going to get into Intellivision collecting and you're going to be buying stuff for the Intellivision, this is important no matter what you get into collecting, especially if it's things that are out of print or they don't make it anymore, is be patient, okay? There's a lot of people out there trying to sell things at outrageous prices. Do not buy them for those outrageous prices, because you only hurt the whole hobby or the whole hobby of collecting for it. If you jump on and buy a game for $90 that normally sells for $10, every other seller in the future is going to look at that $90 game and decide to jack their prices up based on whoever was foolish enough to pay $90 for this $10 game. Okay? So be patient. Intellivision games, you will look them up, single games, and you will see a wide range of prices normally. The higher range prices are really hopeful people. You know, they're full of hopes and wishes that somebody's going to be dumb enough to pay this price. If you don't see a good price on the game you're looking for, be patient. If you're doing eBay, save a search on it and just watch what pops up. There's several games where I paid the normal price for. I would later see it for like $5 or $10 going through and at auction or whatever. So patience really, really, really pays off with collecting for anything, but most especially for Intellivision. Another tip I will give you for the Intellivision is pay attention to auctions that contain game lots. You know, you may see it where it contains, 10 or 50, you see a stack of games, 10 or 15 games like this. These normally pass by unless there's one of the ones that are very rare, like the Body Slam game that goes for almost $200 on a regular basis. Too many people paid the crazy price, I'm telling you. But, these lots go through and they normally start off at very, very low amounts and they really don't achieve much. A lot of times if you look at it, there's some sports games and some other games mixed into these lots. Make sure they have the games you actually want, okay? One of the tactics is to mix 1 or 2 desirable games into a huge lot of random sports games and multiple copies of the same games that nobody wants. Don't go for that. You're better off just buying the single game at the normal price than getting a whole bunch of stuff you don't want. Unless the auction goes for a lot less than the game price, okay? That's a distinct possibility, and that's what I'm getting at. That normally you can pick up a bunch of great games pretty cheap at auction in bundles. But like I said, don't pay more to get the one game you want with a bunch of games you don't want. That's what I'm trying to say there. But like I said, patience and just watching. and you'll be able to collect great for this console. I would suggest that if you want to know more about this console, I'll put a link below as well. The Blue Sky Rangers, they were the guys they were the development team for the Intellivision itself. They've stayed behind the Intellivision for a long time, and they have a website dedicated to the history and stuff. They also have a store where they sell Intellivision games, consoles, and other things. I've shopped there as well. Been very happy. I'll put a link down below for there, but they're definitely a place you want to go to. Also, the Atari Age Intellivision forums. They're a fantastic resource for Intellivision news, games, and more. So there's just a few places on the internet I really enjoy searching for this stuff. The Intellivision, like I said, the modern gaming scene is going wild. As far as the consoles themselves go, the only really new developments with the Intellivision, outside of that stupid Amico debacle, I don't count that. We're talking about the actual Mattel Intellivision here. The only sort of recent thing was the flashback console. The Blue Sky Rangers helped with that console. If you see it cheap, it may be worth it, but I would say you're much better served by getting an Intellivision 2 or a cheap Intellivision of any model working that you can find, and having the ability to enjoy the full library of the Intellivision plus the modern homebrew games that come out. The flashback, if it's cheap enough, hey, I would pay no more than $60 for the thing, to be honest, but I wouldn't pay that. I'd pay maybe $40, but $65 seems to be a pretty average, decent price for it. It's got a lot of the good original library on it, and it's easy to hook in and play. It may be a great thing if you just want to get your feet wet a little bit. But overall, for collecting, I would say avoid it. I have heard the controllers wear out fairly quickly. Speaking about controllers, the winds are blowing a little bit for the console and hardware side of the Intellivision, because on Atari Age we have seen a redesigned physical finished product, and they've already started shipping out of new modern style controllers for the Intellivision 2 and other Intellivisions if you want to, cut wires and solder them in or adapt or whatever, I don't know. But like I said, the Intellivision 2 is your safest bet. But they plug right into the Intellivision 2, and they're held sideways, and they come and you can have a D-pad, a disc, or even a mini thumbstick. And instead of having action buttons and that stuff, it has the keypad in the center, and it has three buttons here, and it plays more like an NES style pad. I'm on the list for pre-order for that, so that may be something you're interested as well, because controllers are getting harder and harder to find, at least in my experience. But yeah, watching this, you should have enough that if you want to get into collecting for the Intellivision, you should be good to go. I know we didn't get off into label variants and the most rare games and all this kind of stuff. Look, that's stuff for another episode if you guys want it. I wanted the bare bones for somebody getting in what to expect. But yeah, if you have any questions, drop them down below. Or hit me up on my Facebook page. There's a link to that on the About page. We'll be doing some Intellivision high score stuff over on the Random Encounter Army Facebook group here soon as well. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching the Random Encounter show. I'll see you guys next time.
Hey, this is DeathStalker V. I wanted to thank you for watching the Random Encounter show. If you love tabletop gaming, solo RPGing, or classic video games, make sure you're subscribed to our channel. If you want more of the show, head over to our channel's About page. There you will find our Facebook and Facebook group pages where you can join in on the fun. Want to help support the show? Make sure to use our affiliate and sponsor links next time you're shopping for your favorite gaming products. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time when we roll for Random Encounter.